All right, we are back here in the legal corner of the podcast. Got some big news to talk about from the Supreme Court NCAA case. Joining me today, our legal correspondent, Phil Fraietta, is back. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you? Good to be back.
Good to be back, and we are here after the big ruling with the Supreme Court, ruling 9-0 against the NCAA. Do you want to refresh the audience of what we were talking about the last time we discussed this case?
Yeah. So as you said, we previewed this case a few months ago now after the oral arguments were heard. And essentially the case challenged the NCAA's ability to restrict what are known as education-related benefits. So those are things such as maybe when you were in college, the university would have a program where, say, you did a summer internship, you can get a stipend through the school. Or you enter some sort of an essay contest with a monetary prize and you win. Things of that sort. Those were prohibited by the NCAA for student athletes. So if a student athlete did an internship and was otherwise eligible for the school's stipend program, they couldn't get it. The case challenged that. They won at the district court, which is the lowest court level. They won at the intermediate appellate court, and now they won at the United States Supreme Court. So the NCAA, as of Monday, is no longer legally allowed to restrict those kinds of benefits. So students can get those. They can get their stipends. They can get their book reimbursement, laptop reimbursement, whatever it may be. If it's related to education, the NCAA cannot restrict it.
Yeah, and just to reset here, obviously, this ruling came out on Monday, a complete sweep, 9-0 from the Supreme Court, and ruled in favor of the athletes. Judge Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion. You got a chance to look at it. What's your big takeaways from reading what they had to say?
So the opinion's narrow, as I just described. It only relates to education benefits. The case had originally challenged all benefits whatsoever, saying that you can't restrict athletes from getting paid. And the NCAA actually survived at the lower court on that. But the way they survived is interesting. So they made a bunch of arguments related to it's not anti-competitive. It's not. We're allowed to do it because in the name of amateurism. And the only argument they made that worked for them is a strange argument. It's an argument that by not paying our players, we're actually increasing consumer choice, because now consumers have a choice between watching professional sports where the athletes are paid or amateur sports where the athletes are not paid. And if we paid our players, that would no longer be the case. So there'd actually be less consumer choice. And that worked at the district court level. They were at the intermediate appellate level. So the NCAA slipped by on that. The Gorsuch opinion acknowledges early on that was the procedural history of the case and that part of the case was not on appeal. But it seemed to hint to me that if that part of the case ultimately did reach the Supreme Court in maybe a subsequently filed case, the court would have a much different view of that question than some of these other courts have. Because there's an issue as to whether, can I make an argument that I need to not pay my employees essentially so that I can offer consumers a choice of seeing unpaid labor? That's a interesting argument when you extrapolate it beyond the NCAA. I don't think any other job could argue that. I don't think your day job, Mike, could say, look, we actually need to not pay you so consumers can have a choice to shop at places where we don't pay the employees. That's an interesting argument, and Gorsuch seemed to indicate that he's not sure how that would play out if it went up. Now, you mentioned that the opinion was 9-0, and that's right, it was. But there was what's called a concurring opinion, which is I agree with the result, but I would have gotten there differently, or I have more to say. And that's what Justice Kavanaugh submitted. and his concurring opinion is just an absolute bloodbath for the NCAA. He makes the point that this justification that we don't need to pay people to preserve the right for consumers to see unpaid athletes is absurd, and he would overturn it and he essentially urged somebody to challenge it so that the Supreme Court would have an opportunity to overturn it, and that's where we stand now. So if I'm the NCAA, yeah, you took a small loss here as far as the education related benefits, but as I said a few months ago when I was on your podcast, if I was the NCAA, was it really worth it? Was it worth taking this case to the Supreme Court? Because now you are signaling to other plaintiffs out there, file a case. The Supreme Court wants to help you. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to get sued again and again and again. And this case is probably going to be back in the Supreme Court in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I want to go back to that opinion by Justice Kavanaugh, which is the more interesting point of this concurrency, because he basically goes in on the NCAA. I think he used example of points. Hey, you don't go a restaurant because the chefs love to cook, or you don't go to a lawyer because they love the practice, the spirit of the law, and basically saying that the NCAA is violating antitrust laws by their model of being. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's more or less what I was just saying. The argument that the NCAA is making here, in the United States, we have antitrust laws, and the antitrust laws essentially prohibit businesses from engaging in anti-competitive behavior. And an anti-competitive behavior is the NCAA saying, schools, you're not allowed to pay your athletes. So, for instance, if Ohio State said, you know what, we want to pay our quarterback, we think if we pay people, we'll get better employees. That's not allowed. It's prohibited by the NCAA, and that is an anti-competitive arrangement by definition. So, how does that work over time? What ends up happening is, in a typical case, that's not allowed. But here, the NCAA argued that you can't prevent us from doing that because it would limit consumer choice. Consumers would not have the option to watch unpaid athletes, people who are playing not for money, but for the love of the game, as they put it. And Kavanaugh just completely obliterated that logic with examples like you said, and it makes sense. I mean, could Burger King say, look, we need to have the option to offer consumers a fast food restaurant where our employees work for the love of fast food? No, of course not. That would never, ever, ever be allowed. So why is it allowed in the context of the NCAA? As Kavanaugh said, the NCAA is not above the law. And he's signaling there that, hey, give me a chance to overturn this, and I will. And I think Gorsuch did so in a more subtle way, in the majority opinion, by pointing out that, this issue is not before us today, so we say nothing about this question. But he made a point that it seemed dubious. I don't think he used that exact word, but that's how I read it.
Yeah, I think in terms of what the NCAA has to take away from this out here, obviously they know that they're in trouble here because there are, I'm sure more lawsuits coming. Is there anything they can do to sort of give themselves more of a chance to not get completely beaten to a pulp by the courts down the line? You think something like putting in NIL legislation universally would sort of help their case here?
Yes. If I was the NCAA, I would swallow some pride here. I'd realize that I've got a Supreme Court that is hostile to me and my position. So my best bet is make a deal. Go and make a deal so that you don't end up in a situation where you can't regulate anything and it's a free-for-all. And that could be the deal. NIL legislation could be the deal. Maybe that's a compromise, but go and try and make a deal with these players because someone's going to sue you. If the lawsuit, for all we know, that lawsuit could have been filed today. I wouldn't be surprised. That's how strong of a signal that opinion was that sue, bring us a case, please. It was the Supreme Court begging somebody to give them another opportunity to, weigh in on this question of, can the NCAA justify not paying players on the basis of creating a market for unpaid athletics?
Yeah.
So if I were the NCAA, I would get my deal making boots on right away.
Yeah, I think the NIL is probably the way you get around this, because you can say, hey, like, we're giving them an opportunity to make money like on the side, where they can sell their name, sell their image, they can make the video game, sell their license to the video game, make money that way, and sort of entice and say, hey, you know, the quarterback at Ohio State is more valuable than the quarterback at, say, like Southern Mississippi. But at the same time, they both have the opportunity to make money, as opposed to, hey, let this be a free-for-all where like Ohio State's paying their players directly. I feel like that's the road they want to avoid going down.
Right, because if you get into the road where Ohio State and Alabama are paying their players, what you do is you solidify what's already slightly there in football, college football, where some teams win, the rest have no chance. But you completely obliterate the concept of March Madness. It no longer exists, because you know that Duke and UNC and UCLA and all the basketball powerhouses are going to pay for the top talent, and they'll all be super teams essentially every single year. So if you want to preserve your ability to market March Madness, which, by the way, is made clear in the opinion, March Madness is the NCAA's most profitable venture, more profitable than even the college football playoffs. You need to stop to make sure these players don't get paid. And the way to do that is make a deal. And the NIL legislation is, in my opinion, the easiest way to do it. It doesn't cost the NCAA that much money. And it's not even going to affect that many players. I mean, you know it, Mike. How many players could even make money off their name who are playing college sports?
Not a ton. Only with the big stars.
And for the most part, it's football. There's the college basketball, to the point with the one and done. How many college basketball stars could make some money Zion was really the last one I could think of. You're more of a college basketball guy than me, but is there anybody playing college basketball now who you think could make big money on his name?
Not right now. It's usually the top couple of kids that come out of high school for the 1 year. And if they get to the Zion supernova level, they become stars. But otherwise, it's like not a big amount of money there.
Right. So to me, and there's certainly not going to be anybody in any other sport. You may have heard in baseball, I've heard of Jack Leiter simply because he's Al Leiter's son. Otherwise, I never would have heard of him. And that's about it. And hockey and volleyball and so on and so forth. So it seems to me like it's a pretty easy way for the NCAA to get around this. But that there's a flip to that coin, which is, does the college baseball players say, well, this doesn't benefit me. Nobody cares about my name and likeness. I want to get paid. So I'm going to sue the NCAA anyway. I'm not agreeing to any deal. And then you run into a problem if that happens. But if you're the NCAA, I think they need to loosen their grip a little bit and start making a deal.
Yeah, I think they do too. I think it's something we're going to have to watch at them down the line. And I think, as you said, the NIL model, I think is the easiest way out of this. And I think that's what's going to end up happening down the line. They're trying to pass the buck to Congress, make Congress do it for them, but they really should just step up on their own and do it.
I mean, the NCAA has to regret what they did here, Mike.
Yeah,
they fought over education-related benefits. These are minor benefits. You're talking about, a $5,000 stipend for a kid who takes a summer internship somewhere. And they fought it, and look at what it got them. It got them a Supreme Court decision that is foreshadowing their complete obliteration. So they got to learn from that and say, you know what? We're not going to have total control anymore, so let's get the best deal we can.
Yeah, and to clarify one other point you made earlier about the football playoff thing, that's not even something the NCAA control. That's completely outside their system. The thing they control is March Madness. So if something's going to destroy March Madness, that's going to ruin their bottom line, and that's going to change the landscape of college sports. So they need to get something done if they want to stay in the business.
Right, and I think March Madness would be at most jeopardy again, because the reason that people are into March Madness now is the Cinderella. Everybody's watching March Madness for the Cinderella. So if March Madness becomes the 2010 decade NBA playoffs where LeBron James is in the finals every year, it's not the thing.
Yeah, it's not. Let's go.
And that's what's going to happen. You're going to have Duke and UNC and UCLA and so on and so forth with super teams every single year.
Yeah, let's move on to the other big sports thing right now. It's not the legal area, but baseball could impact a CBA down the line, in my opinion. The sticky stuff situation, which to me, this thing, I said in the podcast before, it's so dumb what's going on here. What do you think about this?
I agree. It is so stupid. Major League Baseball, I've said this on your podcast before, they have a problem. And the problem relates to there's not enough offense in the game. So why isn't there enough offense in the game? Some people say it's analytics because the hitters are trying to hit home runs. I don't agree with that. I think it's three simple points, actually. One, the pitchers are better. Why are they better? The pitchers are better because teams have emphasized that, you know what, if this guy only has 2 pitches, but they're good pitches, I can use him. So they built, to borrow a phrase from Kevin Cash and the Rays, a stable of guys who throw 98. And that's what teams did. So that improves pitching. And that was smart. For years, if you had a guy who threw hard, you would do everything you can to force him to be a starter. And a lot of guys burned out that way. So for the most part, relievers were guys who were failed starters. That's not the case anymore. Now there are people who they groom to be relievers. So that's number one. Number two is the shift. The shift has it's been 10, 15 years now. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry to some of the listeners who might be listening, screaming, why doesn't Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton lay down a bunt? It's not going to happen. They're not going to lay down a bunt. They're not going to hit a ground ball to second base. And at this point, you just have to either admit that they can't do it, they won't do it, whatever it is, it's not happening. It's been, how many years has this been now that we've heard the same thing about why don't all these big power hitters, especially the lefties, lay down bunts, and they don't do it. So that's out of the question. But the shift has hurt offense. But the third thing, it's completely Major League Baseball's fault. They changed the ball for no reason. They were concerned that there were too many home runs, so they changed the ball this season, and now there's not enough home runs, and now there's no offense. So essentially, to summarize what I was saying, what you have is a situation where, okay, I got a pitcher who's throwing 98 miles an hour, and he's got a nasty breaking ball, and he can throw it for strikes whenever he wants. They're shifting me, so if I hit the ball hard on the ground, I'm probably out because I'll hit it right at a fielder. So what are you going to do as a hitter? I'm going to hit it out of the ballpark. That's my best chance for my team to score a run is for me to lift this ball and get it out of the ballpark. Justin Turner is actually the brainchild behind this theory. He kind of realized it, and it worked for him. Let me lift the ball. And if I hit it out of the ballpark, we get a run, because the chances of my teammates getting 3 hits in a row against the guy who throws 98 with nasty breaking stuff is low. And that was a viable strategy for the past 5 years because they had the ball that was jumping off the bat. Now they changed the ball to make it fly less through the air, so now you just get a bunch of lazy flyouts if you even put them in contact. So it makes no sense to me why Major League Baseball changed the ball. But instead of admitting that they made a mistake, now they're going after the pitchers and saying the sticky stuff is the reason that these guys are better pitchers. It's absurd. It's completely absurd. Every pitcher in baseball has been using the quote-unquote sticky stuff for 3-4 decades. Everybody knows it. And there's no rule prohibiting it. This isn't Michael Pineda when he was dumping tar on the ball. This is material just to give you a better grip on the baseball. It's very stupid. It seems to be creating a problem where one doesn't exist. And to make matters worse, you do it in the middle of the season? How are you going to tell these pitchers who have been throwing for the past however many years using this stuff, oh, you can't use it anymore in the middle of the season? It's stupid and it's dangerous. And Mike, as I'm sure, I don't know if you've touched it on a podcast yet, but Tyler Glasnow, he's got a torn UCL. He may need Tommy John surgery. That's still up in the air. And he says it's because they prohibited him from using sticky stuff. And his theory there is that I had no choice but to grip the ball harder in order to get a grip because I couldn't use the sticky stuff on the ball anymore. So I'm gripping the ball harder. I mean, if you kind of simulate it right now, take your hand and squeeze like you're holding a ball, the harder you do it, you'll feel those ligaments in your forearm and your elbow contract. And that's what happens. And imagine doing that 100 times, pitch after pitch after pitch. Of course these guys are going to get hurt.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually do have a game-used foul ball like here from the 2021 season. So I have like one I am doing, and you can feel that as it's happening. Like you just feel when you're trying to tighten it, because gripping this thing is not easy.
No, and the harder you grip the ball, the tighter your ligaments get. So imagine doing that with that violent force of a pitching delivery. You're going to get hurt. So why not let these guys put this sticky stuff, so to speak, a little bit, obviously. I'm not talking about coating the ball or spitballs or anything like that, but get a better grip, and then you can make your pitches without having to squeeze the ball with a death grip.
Yeah, it's certainly.
It's just very stupid.
I do not like doing it in the middle of the season, because I think it just screams like we have a problem. We're trying to do anything we can to fix it, and fixing the ball seems to be the fastest way to this. But I just think the problem here is obviously the checks are very, very dumb, because the way they do it now is like basically stop you on the field, check your hat, check your glove, check your belt. So if you were cheating, you could know where to put not to put the stuff in any of those third places. You could find a way to do it. And number two, like, you're not getting that much of an effect, in my opinion, because they went to the point, like, yeah, if you're using spider tack or any of these other things that they're using, that could be a problem. But apparently sunscreen and rosin has been something that's been going on for years, and now they're saying you can't even use that, which is a big pitcher for using just to grip the ball, which is, again, MLB's problem.
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't want your pitchers to grip the ball. It makes no sense. It really makes no sense. It's crazy, and you're right. It's easy to get around. It's a stupid rule, and what ends up happening is, of course, these sticky stuff checks are on the best pitchers in the game. So DeGrom's pitching well. He must be using the sticky stuff. He's not. Garrett Cole must be using the sticky stuff. He's not anymore. Now, were these guys using the sticky stuff in the past? I'm sure they were. Every pitcher in the league was, because it wasn't prohibited. Or if it was a situation. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but it's basically a situation where, yeah, there may be a rule on paper, but nobody's enforcing it. Now all of a sudden you say, you know what, we're going to enforce it.
No, I'm sure we're happy with that situation where it's sort of a gentleman's agreement where, like, I'm not calling you out for cheating, because if my guys are cheating and you're calling me out, then we're going to have problems. That's why I wasn't getting enforced ever.
That's happened recently. I don't know if you heard, Luis Rojas went on an interview with Carton and Roberts. And this was back early in the season, and they were asking him, why didn't you do anything? Because Craig Kimbrell seemed like he had all this crap all over his hat. And, he kept dodging the question. But essentially what he was saying to me was, well, if I call out him, what about my guys?
Yeah, that's the issue there. And I think also in terms of the sticky stuff situation, this is something I feel like it's dumb to do in the middle of the season, as you said, because it could have been what caused Tyler Glasnow to get hurt. You don't know for sure, but you can't rule it out. For me, it's one of those things where, like, why can't you just do this in the offseason and say, hey, we're come up with one approved substance that you can use to grip the ball, but you can't use any of the other stuff. Like, why couldn't that have been the option?
That would work too. That's fine. You want to do that, do that. But if you want to get offense back in baseball, there's a couple of things you can do that are just very easy. One is, go back to the balls that jump off the bat. Why do we need to use these new balls? I don't understand that. And two, though, and expand the shift. I'm an advocate for banning or restricting the shift. I don't think there's any problem with it. I think, Mike, every sport has a legal defense as a penalty. In basketball, there's 3 in the key. You can't have a big man just stand in the key. That's an illegal defense. In the NFL, there's a legal defense formation. Why can't illegal defense be a penalty in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I'll push back on the ball slightly, because 2019, what we had was just ridiculous, where you hit a pop fly, was going over the wall. I think there needs to be a balance there with the ball, like where you can do that. But I think my solution is more restrict the number of pitchers you have on a staff, because the way the staff's being used right now, you can carry 14, 15 pitchers and say, you know what, like, you don't have to go a third time through the order. Just throw as hard as you can. And then if you are forcing these teams to carry, say, only 13, you have to push guys longer. They can't just max out at 98 every time. And then if there's a couple of ticks coming off, they have to go through the order and get more innings. Then you might have less velocity, a little more ability to make contact. That's my personal opinion.
I'm fine with that too. That's another solution that could work. But the key here is that all these solutions that we're proposing are things that are not going to get people hurt. No one's going to get hurt if they use a different ball, or if they ban the shift, or if they limit the number of pitchers on the roster. People are going to get hurt if you stop using this quote unquote sticky stuff, especially in the middle of the season. It's stupid. I think it was a bad decision by Major League Baseball. They recognize they have a problem, but that's not how to fix it.
Even if we're not just talking about the pitchers getting hurt, the pitchers have to control the ball. If they have less control of the ball, the hitters are at risk too if they're getting plunked more.
Sure, absolutely. Everybody's at risk. Nobody wins. And you know, actually, I have the Yankee game on now. They're doing a sticky stuff check on Garrett Cole right now. So there's another one because he pitched a good inning. So we got to do a sticky stuff check. It's it's crazy. It's crazy. But you're right. Nobody wins. And to the hitters who are coming out in support of this, I know Judge and Stanton on the Yankees did. Come on, guys. It's not good baseball. And I don't know how do you look your pitchers in the eyes, your teammates, and tell them, yeah, well, look, I don't want people using this sticky stuff. That's not right.
Now, what do you think also about the Pete Alonso comments a few weeks back about how he thinks MLB is doctoring the baseball based on the free agent classes coming up?
I don't think so, but I put nothing past Major League Baseball when it comes to labor negotiations, and you know that. I've said that on this podcast 100 times in the past 18 months. I think Major League Baseball is colluding against the players to keep salaries down. So I put nothing past Major League Baseball to change the ball based on who's going to be a free agent.
I agree with you there because I don't think that this is a league where they've tried so hard to stop pace of play and all these things. I don't think they are that coordinated to convincingly alter the baseball. It didn't even work at that point because the year they did it to suppress the pitchers, all the big pitchers got paid. So it's not like that actually worked. The thing I would be more curious about is if if this is in some way painting the sticky stuff here, say, hey, pitchers are why you can't hit. Hitters are mad at the pitcher for cheating, so are trying to divide the union and have a CBA negotiation. That would not surprise me.
Not at all, and that is exactly what's happening. You're starting to get a split between pitchers and hitters in the union. So yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think Alonso's theory is a bit too far in the conspiracy theory for me, but nothing surprises me with Major League Baseball and the way they approach labor negotiations.
No, and this is another thing where even the thing that concerns me more is in terms of negotiations, even if Alonso is completely off base, if there are a lot of guys in that PA room who have some degree of thinking, you know what, Pete's got a point there, then you have a big issue when it comes to negotiation because these guys do not trust each other. You have a long gap to overcome and try and get a deal done.
There is such little trust between both sides now that if Major League Baseball said the sky is blue, the players' union would say, no, it's not, it's green. That's how bad these two sides are. I would be very surprised. It's early, but I'd be very surprised if we have a season start on time next year. There is just no level of trust. And you're right. It's to the point where you've got guys like Pete Alonso coming up with conspiracy theories that, as outlandish as they sound, you can't even roll them out anymore because that's how baseball behaved in the past 5-6 years with the free agent classes. And you got to look no further than I've said it 100 times on your podcast. There are so many examples. It took guys like Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. They can't get signed until spring training's about to start. Nobody wants Garrett Cole except the Yankees, even though he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. There's so many different examples of people who should be sought after by all 30 teams in the league, and they can't get contracts. Like I said, Masahiro Tanaka's pitching in Japan. You tell me, Mike, would you rather have Jameson Taillon or Masahiro Tanaka if you're the Yankees?
Not for nothing, too. Another one to bring up there. How is Taijuan Walker's only offer last offseason coming from the Mets?
Yeah, only offer guys, the Mets. And it's crazy. It's crazy the way that these teams have behaved, that they've gotten away with it, and the union's fed up. And I don't blame them. There are a good. We've talked about it ad nauseum now, but there's 15 to 20 teams who have no intention on competing at the beginning of every season. They're not even in their wildest dreams that I think they're going to compete.
Yeah, it's certainly a problem.
And that's not how any professional sports supposed to work.
And it's certainly a problem because in terms of this MLB, like they need to, for their product, get 22 off on time, because it's just in terms of not even the impact on the fans, it's the impact on the players themselves, because you have a shortened year in 2020, this wild year with the COVID where everybody's getting hurt because they're trying to jump back from 60 games to 162. Maybe shorten the product again potentially next year, and then going back to 162 and 23. Like, you're going to really mess these players up.
Yeah, I would be surprised, Mike, to see, and I don't know if you've seen this data because I haven't. I wonder what the television ratings are of the season this year.
I don't know, because
I'm curious.
I am too, because there's a lot of teams right now that are just completely awful, like falling off the face of the earth, like the Diamondbacks, the Rockies, the Orioles, the Pirates. You can name like 7 teams right now that are like 15 games under 500 already.
Oh, sure, and the sport itself is, I mean, and I say this as a diehard baseball fan, it's tough to watch sometimes because nobody can get a hit. Everyone strikes out or hits the ground balls into the shift. It could be a boring game to watch at times. I bet you the TV ratings are down. Now, I bet you that what Major League Baseball does is they're going to come in and say, no, we're doing fine. Look at the gate, the revenues at the gate. But I don't think that's a fair comparison because, people in this country have been locked down for 15 months. Of course, they're going to go to the game. It's something to do. But once that wears off of the excitement of being back in the stadium, I wonder if gate revenues are going to be up. I haven't seen the data, but I would venture to guess that TV ratings are down this year.
Yeah, I would certainly think so. Keep an eye on this stuff in the future. Phil, thanks again for all the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem, Mike. Thank you. And hopefully we can chat soon about baseball or whatever, and keep an eye out on the filings against the NCAA because I think a new case is coming.